Hey everybody, I'm Elysia Buss, host of Horsepower Empowerment Through Connection, and today I have the great honor of getting to introduce Patricia Kelly, an incredible horsewoman who has actually even been inducted to the Cowgirl Hall of Fame. Look at me just messing things up already. It's just all my excitement. She is a former Marine. She used to decode messages during the Viet Nam War, and she has created an absolutely amazing facility for people of color, just people, all kinds of people in her community in Connecticut called Ebony Horsewomen Incorporated. And man, she has been around here and working with these horses in this facility since 1984. That is almost my entire life, y'all. Like, I am 40 years old. That's amazing to me. And so she is one of the original people in the kind of work that we do in equine assisted learning. She has mental health therapists there and so much more. So before I get completely carried away, which is probably too late, I'm going to let Patricia come to the floor. Patricia, thank you so much for being with us here today.
It is absolutely my pleasure to be with you today. Thanks for inviting me.
You are so welcome. So Patricia, tell me, what got you into horses to begin with?
Oh God, it's a story that I tell all the time. My kids are just like, don't tell it again, please.
They're like, they can recite it for you.
Yeah, it's like everybody asks me that, and so I have to tell them. But it was my family purchased a home in almost all-white neighborhood, and it was not a very pleasant experience. But right next door to me was a Jewish grocer who had a horse and wagon, and he would deliver produce through the community with his horse and wagon. So on this one particular day, the residents of the street got together to petition the woman who sold the house to us, which was a Jewish Holocaust survivor, and she hated prejudice, to demand for her to tell why she sold my parents' house without telling them. And so I was kind of peeking from around the side of the house to hear this stuff. And I hear this beckoning from in back of me. And when I turned and looked, there was this white guy with a white beard and a big stomach. And I said to myself, oh my God, I live next door to Santa Claus. And he said to me, little girl, you don't need to hear that, you know. And he beckoned for me to come. And there was a fence a wooden fence that separated our properties. And so he was standing next to this horse, and the biggest horse I'd ever seen in my life, probably the only horse I'd seen up close in my life. And he said, little girl, do you like the horse? And I nodded yes. And he said, come. And so I climbed through some broken spokes in the fence, and Mr. Fisher handed me a brush, and it was a wrap. And that is what got me started. From there, he taught me a good many things: how to groom a horse, how to tack the horse up to the wagon, and then eventually how to ride on this horse. The horse never had a name. The horse was called Horse. And that horse was like my best friend. Actually, for a long time, was my only friend on the block. So that began it for me. Some years later, the horse died in a fire that burned down Mr. Fisher's barn. And it wasn't until I got to the Marine Corps when I started to ride again, when I was in California. So and I realized, you know, how much of an impact it had on me and how much it helped me. So when I got back home from the Corps, I looked for places where I could ride again. And that's how I got started.
And that's how you got started. And like, what are the different types of horsemanship that you discovered? Like, what are your favorites? Dressage, penning, trail riding? Like, what are your favorites?
So there was a group before us in Connecticut, in Hartford actually, called the Ebony Horsewomen, and they had been around since, late 50s into the 60s, and now we were heading the late 70s into the 80s, and so they were pretty much disbanded. And there was one guy who had a farm in the suburbs, and I went to him, and he rode Western. And so I fell in love with the Western discipline. However, when we started our program here, there were no, and I wanted my kids to be able to compete. There are very few Western programs, Western horse shows in the area. It's Connecticut.
Right.
Everybody did English. So I taught myself hunter jumper. And from there, I began to teach all the other trainers that as well. But I'm a cowgirl. Short and sweet, I'm a cowgirl. That is my love right there.
I love it. Did you have you gotten to play with a lot of cows? Like, I remember when I was young, I was living next to this farmer. He had 100 head of cattle at a finishing farm. And every once in a while, he'd let us go over and chase the cows. We weren't really supposed to that much, but it was really, really fun.
No, I have not actually had any interaction with the cow, but some of my students have done team penning, and they like it. They like it. I'm kind of like Western pleasure.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is nice and easy and sweet. I like that.
Yeah, I love that there's so many different styles of riding. Like, we sometimes forget, like, even just within Western, just, like you talking about Western pleasure versus like team penning and everything else. And I think so many people, when they think of Western, they just think of one thing, right? Yeah. Like the cowboys in the movies. But there's so much more to it.
It's so much. I mean, there's Western dressage.
I know. I just learned that a few years ago. I thought that was so cool.
Yeah. I mean, many of the movements, some of the Western style has moved towards the middle and come closer to the English discipline. Years and years ago, when you rode Western, your feet were way out in front of you like that. But now, they have brought it back in, and that you're kind of aligned the way you would be if you were riding English. So a lot of that has moved in. Now, trail riding is a whole different thing altogether. It's almost, make it up as you go.
Yeah, for sure.
But some of the other inner disciplines within the Western style has kind of moved to the middle now.
Yeah, that's really cool. And you have a bunch of different things that you offer at your program. Like, I saw that you have mounted patrol available for
park rangers.
Yeah, the park rangers. I thought that was really cool. And then you have saddle club and like young ladies dressage. Tell us more about that.
Well, so it's not a one size fits all. It really isn't. The boys, even though we're Ebony Horsewomen, the boys, and we get a lot of boys. The boys were not going to wear the English breeches. They were just not going to do that. And so to meet them to where they are and the kind of work that we wanted to do with them, it had to be the cowboy. It had to be the Western style. So the focus for the young men was more on civic duties and civic give back. Yeah. And so we're in 693 acres here. Beautiful. And you could literally ride in the park for hours and never leave the park. It borders 2 other towns. So you could actually go to other towns and never be out of the park. And it's such a vast park that it actually needed, mounted rangers out there. And so it gave us an opportunity to do several things. One, it helps to work on discipline, accountability, responsibility, civic engagement, horsemanship, map reading, navigation, trail marking, so many different levels, and also being ambassadors for the park. And it seemed to meet the needs of what the young men needed. Yeah. They needed to be out and about, and also they cast such a wide shadow. When they ride through the park and the other kids see these black horsemen on horses, it's quite a different experience, and it's something that helps other kids to see a difference. You know, it's not just one thing that you see all the time. And the guys understand the history of the park so they can give directions. They're also the eyes and ears of the park. They don't have any arrest ability, but they certainly can see things that are not supposed to happen and then radio it in so that we can alert whoever we need to alert for that. So it worked for the guys really, really well.
That's
the
gorgeous.
dressage team was another element that works well for the girls. So, you know, when young ladies get to a certain age, it's all about hair and nails and, you know, body image.
Yeah.
And we found that in too many cases, there was too much emphasis on hair, nails, and body image. And so when we got them into riding dressage, which is, has a lot more, let's say, barriers and constraints in how you use your body and how you present your body, it seemed to meet what they needed to have in terms of redirecting their focus from, you know, the exterior to the interior, and how they breathe and how they distribute their weight on the horse, and the softness of their hands, you know, the directions of the legs, you know, working together, that we actually changed the narrative from hair and nails to, well, how did you sit to that trot? How did you sit to his canter, you know? And that's what we wanted. We wanted them to refocus, and it worked really well. And it not only worked well with the riding of the horse, but it refocused them on their direction in life. So it wasn't so much exterior, how the exterior looked, yeah, but more so of using your mind and using your abilities to get where you need to go. Yeah. So that works well. The Saddle Club that we have is for the really younger kid who, some of them may be too young to start in horsemanship classes, but they need to be around animals. So we have 7 other species of animals. We have chickens and rabbits and reptiles and ferrets, and God only knows there's some other stuff back there. And so they get to do, so we incorporate it with 4-H.
Nice.
And then they get to do animal science, and they do a little biology, you know, animal care. And also we incorporate that because we have, you know, manure galore.
Yes, I would well imagine.
So we have several gardens, and they do some agriculture along with that. So it works really well for that age group.
That's so cool. Have you been implementing academics as well with all these different things that you're doing?
All of it is with academics. I mean, even when you do horsemanship classes, you just think about a basic riding lesson. So the basic riding lesson is one, you must hear the instructor. And then you must process the information that is given to you and then implement it. Indeed. And much of it can be abstract. So you're talking inside leg, outside rein, bring your weight forward 2 degrees. All of this has to be processed. And so while they're doing it with something that they love, they don't really understand that they are helping education, because when you go to school, it's all about to hear the teacher, process the information, and implement it. So, and what happens with the horsemanship classes is that the focus time gets to be expanded. So that keeps them from drifting off, you know, thinking about, you know, what I'm going to do later or whatever. You're on 1,200 pounds of flesh here. You might want to hear what I have to say.
Yeah, definitely.
So, exactly. So when they take their riding lessons, they are focused on the instructor. That's transferable to education, because now I'm in school. I can focus. My focus time is now expanded. So I actually hear the teacher. And so now I can process and implement. So that's one portion of education that we support with that. But the other portion is we do equine husbandry. So that's all about the maintenance and care of the horse in terms of diseases and anatomy and skeletal structures and feeding and types of hay and types of grain and common illnesses, colic and the heaves and all sorts of things. So they have quite a bit of learning to do in that, which has spurred many of them to want to be vets.
That's fantastic. Do you find it also helps them with communication and boundaries and being more aware of how their energy affects others?
Well, yes, the short answer to that is yes. So again, horses are prey animals and we are predators. And not only are we predators, but we're the biggest predator on the planet. We hunt and kill everything. Horses are naturally suspicious of us. So when a child presents with a lot of anxiety and aggression or even depression, horses are very leery of wanting to hear. They don't understand English, but they understand energy levels. They understand that sixth sense of aggression or depression or anger or whatever. And you cannot communicate with them successfully. So when we teach the child, when we understand that this child is presenting with these kind of conditions and the horse is like, I can't hear you, and I don't really want to be next to you, then we understand that what we need to do is to instruct the child is that whatever is going on with you right now, we have to change that energy because he can't hear you. And not only can he not hear you, he doesn't want to be near you. So let's put aside, whatever is going on right now, just for right now, and see what we get. And so the minute they are able to do that, the horse changes and then now they can communicate. So what it teaches is that I may not be able to do anything with the condition that I'm faced with, but I can do something with how I address it.
Yeah.
And that's a valuable lesson. We can't change everything in someone's life, but we can change how you handle it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's
key to the first responders and the veterans that you also
right. Well, yeah, the horse has been the greatest teacher, I think, of all, because he just won't tolerate it. He just won't tolerate it. Yeah. And so when that child realizes that I have to do, it's not an external condition, it's an internal condition. So I need to change what's going on inside so that now that I can communicate outside.
Yeah.
And it works.
I am so grateful for that, especially as an educator myself. My master's degree is in education and Waldorf teaching certificate. And so I've seen the difference when kids get to work with the horses and then coming into the classroom and how much calmer they are and able to communicate their needs and having healthier boundaries and just being more of their authentic self, right? Because they don't have all those layers of like pain and frustrations on them because they're able to functionally move through them. So really
they get moments of relief. It doesn't cure everything.
No, but it gives you tools to get closer.
Right. It does give them moments of relief, and it does give them tools that they can use to help manage through crisis or challenges.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why everyone in the entire world needs to be around horses right now.
Everybody.
Literally everybody.
Yes, I agree.
The world would be so much better if we could all just take a time out and go brush a horse or sit next to them or ride them or,
absolutely.
Anything, literally anything involving horses or donkeys. Let's not leave out the donkeys. Donkeys are very important too.
I'm right there with you. And they're the cutest things. I love them. But yeah, any equine, any equid. Yes, absolutely.
I love donkeys, how they bray. Like it never gets old to me. It's so funny. And then tell us a little bit more about the opportunities you have for veterans and first responders at your facility, if you would.
Yeah. So we have always worked with the first responders. When we first got here, we didn't focus that much with them on mental health. What we did focus on was, because we were a stable in the city, if there were a fire here, they would need to know how to work with the horses, how to move the horses. And unlike television, where you see a fire happen and the horses run out. That is not what happens naturally. You know, that stall becomes their home and where they think they're protected. And so moving them out when there's a fire is not easy. So what we did when we first started operating in the community was to teach firemen, the firehouses that were connected to our area, how to work with the horses. And lo and behold, we thought we were just giving information as to, you know, how to move a horse. But we found that the men and women who came for that training found a great deal of relief themselves, and less of an anxiety and nervousness that they had, you know, just being on the job. So it didn't connect that much then. I think it started to connect on the third year that we were giving this training, when we were hearing comments that, you know, how much better it made them feel and how they were able to continue to do the job without a lot of anxiety later. That we began to connect the dots, that this is therapy for them. This is something that they're having. And then also we worked with the Veterans Administration, because I'm a veteran myself. And during the early years of my other career, I represented veterans all the way up to the Pentagon to change their, what we call bad paper veterans that were discharged with less than honorable discharge. They had undesirable discharges or general discharges. So I worked with them to upgrade that paper so they could get benefits. So I was in contact with the Veterans Administration on a daily basis anyway. When we began to when they were asked, you know, do you want any volunteers to come and help you, you know, shovel manure or whatever? And we said, yeah. And the guys would come out and would be like, God, this is the only place that I feel comfortable. Again, more connecting of the dots. This is equine therapy. And so we launched a full-fledged program with the Veterans Administration to provide equine therapy for veterans, whether they were honorably discharged or not. And it worked. And I remember we gave this one session, and we called it the Journey, and where we had obstacle courses in the arena. We have an indoor arena. And we had each veteran take a horse over these various obstacles. And this one veteran got to this one particular obstacle and stopped, froze, absolute froze, and he couldn't move. And the horse he had was a horse that is now gone now. His name was Ali, big quarter horse. And Ali must have sensed that this was something, it represented something in his life that he had never been able to get past. And Ali walked him forward across this obstacle, and the guy broke down and started crying and said he had never been able. He never said what that was for him, but whatever it was, he was never able to get past it. But Ali knew he needed to get past it and walked him through it. And it was, everybody just started crying because it was so impactful, you know, that it was just amazing. So yeah, we work with veterans. We also work with individuals who are in a reentry stage, you know, individuals who are coming out of prison and need another start. And we know that a lot of individuals who have had prison life are traumatized.
Yeah.
And men particularly, you know, men don't want to talk. You know, you ask them what's the matter, nothing's the matter, you know, and it's the whole world that's the matter, but they won't talk. And the beauty with equine assisted psychotherapy is that you don't need to talk.
Yeah.
You know, therapy is not for a therapist to tell you what's wrong. Therapy is for you to figure out what's wrong. And that the therapist is there to give you some tools to help you manage. So it works really well for guys.
Oh, that's fantastic. So many great things happening at your place. Like, it's amazing. It's not surprising at all that you got inducted into the Cowgirl Hall of Fame.
Well, I have some help. I'm not doing all this by myself. I have an amazing staff.
How many people do you have over there? How many different?
Oh God, let's see. I think it's
like
seven. I have chief of finances, chief of operations, facility manager, 4 horse specialists, 4 therapists, and 2 certified riding instructors, and a couple associates.
Awesome. And how many volunteers?
Not now during COVID. You know,
Oh,
prior
yeah.
to COVID, we had a great many volunteers, but because now of COVID, we try to create a bubble as well as we can, given the circumstances that we're working with. We still taking clients for equine psychotherapy sessions, and we pared down the youth programs to a number that is regulated by the state of Connecticut.
Right.
So we have to be very careful who we let on campus.
That makes sense to me.
Yeah, we're hoping that.
Are you doing any virtual work?
Yes, absolutely. So when the pandemic hit in March, we shut down completely because the state of Connecticut just shut down. But we recognized that it was imperative that we stay in contact with the kids. So we started virtual classes 2 days a week, Saturday movie night, so that we could stay engaged. And that was for a couple of reasons. One, we knew that their social movement had been completely stopped. Right. So we wanted to give them interactions with each other. You know, many of them have been here for years. So we wanted to continue that interaction with others, but it also gave us an opportunity to start training them on COVID rules, the wearing of the mask, social distancing, washing your hands. And we made it explicitly clear that at some point we're going to be able to bring you back to the barn, but you can only come back if you follow these rules and regulations. So it gave us, I think we got back July 1. So from March to July, we had grooming time with these kids to know that the minute you step foot on campus, temperatures had to be taken before you could step in. You know, all of the protocols followed, and it worked. It worked. And they were so glad to be back and so glad to see each other in the flesh and to see their horses. So we didn't have any problems with, you know, following the COVID CDC protocols. So I've forgotten the question. I've talked so much.
It was just, no, the question was just the virtual work. And so it was fine. And
so it's and then Saturday movie night, we did, you know, we would play a movie, Zoom, obviously. Yeah. And so they would have something to do Saturday night. You know, everybody got popcorn or whatever, and we do a movie. So it worked. It was the best thing that next to actually being in person.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I love that you were able to stay connected and keep it going, and, you know, get them in a place where they knew what all the protocols were, so they didn't really like miss a step when they came back. Like, that's right. Very wise. very well done. And speaking of protocols, like, what started your journey in regards to picking the different models you decided to operate with? So we talked initially beforehand about Igala. Can you tell us a little bit more about that journey of connecting?
So when we recognized that what we were doing was therapeutic, we didn't, in the early years, I think it was just beginning to emerge, equine assisted therapy and psychotherapy. The terminology was being crafted, and the science behind it was beginning to be pushed out into the horse community. But we understood that there was something therapeutic that was going on. So my first encounter with understanding the science, or I should say Ebony Horsewoman's first encounter, was with Greg Kirsten of OK Corral. And I liked Greg's approach because he's a cowboy, number one. Right. Down to earth, straight shooter, no fancy this, that, or other, just straight to what it is. And I remember we went to his place, and I remember he gave me an assignment, and he had this little feisty pony, And he said, I want you to lunge this pony. No problem. So this little pony, he was like, I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. I'm like, yeah, you're going to do this. You're going to lunge. You're going to lunge. And so he did it. I got the pony to lunge, clockwise, counterclockwise, so no problem. So after, I'm feeling like, okay, I did that. He said, well, how was that? And I said, he didn't want to do it, but I got him to do it. He says, you do realize you're only half the equation. What do you mean? And so he began to explain my personality, my get her done personality, and how much weight I put on myself with that get her done personality. And he explained, you're only half the equation. And that right there, I don't know if it changed me a lot. It did make me stop and think. And I can hear Greg from time to time in my ear, like, you're only half the equation, And so it was very helpful. So I loved his method of using the horse to work through issues. So we moved on from there because EGALA was really kind of emerging and pushing forward as being, the forerunner.
Yeah. And
so we were certified under EGALA. We also did natural horsemanship as well. We looked at that. As a matter of fact, we had them here. We hosted them here for one of their workshops. And, in looking at it from over the years and looking at all the models, all of them very good. I still lean to Greg. All of them very good, but none of them really fit the population of individuals, not just youth, but adults as well, of who we were seeing. It didn't have cultural competency at all. So we developed a hybrid of those models to a model that fit the people that we're dealing with. One of the things that we also incorporated that we didn't find in any of the other models was that all of the weight of the language of the horse and understanding the language of the horse was on the horse specialist or the equine specialist. And the training that the mental health folks got didn't address any of that. And so we felt, why should the mental health person stand there and be ignorant of what those ears back meant or stomping of the feet, when they should know that this horse may be reacting to an energy level of that client. So our model teaches pretty much equine psychology for the mental health professional, and also the cultural competency, because if you lose the trust of the client because of the therapist, then the whole session is done.
Yeah.
There is no psychotherapy being done at all. And if the therapist does not know how to address the cultural differences of the client, there can be no basis from which they can operate. Yeah. So our model teaches cultural competency and with understanding horse language as well. And that fits the population of Native Americans, African Americans, Caribbean Americans, Hispanics, Pacific Islanders. Those people are ethnic groups that are not your white Anglo-Saxon.
Yeah.
And not only that, this is being done in an urban center, which is extremely different than what you find in the suburbs. And so we had to create a model that fit this demographic.
Yeah,
Now, having said that, it does not exclude the white client at all, but it specifically can address the ethnicities that we encounter.
and thank you very much for creating that. There definitely isn't enough of it within our industry. Are there people that can come to your place as clinicians, equine specialists, and
Absolutely.
like to take your cultural competency course?
Yes, we did quite a bit of that before COVID, quite a bit of it. Even with continuing education with the National Social Workers Association, we gave workshops several times a year. Since COVID, we have not had that. We're hoping to be able to do that in the spring. Now, I am training some therapists now virtually.
Excellent.
Yeah, so we are working to try to get that, back up, and we're hoping, again, with the onset with the vaccines, that we'll have that space to really ramp up again.
No, that's fantastic. And speaking of cultural competency, like there aren't very many minorities within our field in the equine industry. So like when you first came into the field and you were building all the beautiful things that you were there some things that you kept running across in your community that were difficult? And like,
well, let me correct you. There's a great deal of African Americans in the horse industry, but they're not seen.
Well,
are you in Texas?
Huh?
Are you in Texas?
I went through Texas. Right now I'm in Colorado for a hot minute.
Okay. There are so many horse clubs, African American horse clubs, you would not believe.
That makes my heart so happy. Thank you very much for correcting me.
Tremendous amount.
Part of what I'm doing on my mission is to try and like give more visibility to people of color in the industry. And I've had a really difficult time connecting in, and maybe that's just because I don't know the right people to be able to make those connections.
Again, so they're there, but they have not been given a platform. They've been overlooked, and they have not just sprung up. They have been there for decades.
I'm like, send them all to me. Send them all to me. I want to give all of them a platform.
But what you have to know is that when you start on the formal disciplines, the English discipline, even Western pleasure, competitions, you don't see that many. And it's because the industry is not accepting in those areas. But folks who have horses and ride, there's a great many African Americans, but they're not seen.
Yeah.
They're not seen.
No, I meant more within like the equine assisted learning and mental health.
Oh, no. As a matter of fact, the only as of today, and with my current knowledge, the only certified mental health therapists of color are right here in our facility.
There are a couple more
that are certified.
And are certified. Rochelle Shelburne is in Georgia. She's certified.
Excellent.
And then Elizabeth McCorvey is also certified, and she's in North Carolina.
Okay, so 2.
But I'm like, yes, there's not nearly enough, but which is why I'm trying to do what I'm doing so I can find those people that are in the industry that are certified doing things and be like, hey, like, here they are. Let's have more people. Let's create more opportunities for people of color, because like there's a lot of opportunity out there, and let's break through those barriers, because there are great people that are incredibly talented human beings that are out there that really just need to have the opportunity to shine. So I'm grateful to have you here, and I'm always happy when people correct me and tell me I'm wrong about something. I'm like, yes, help me find them. I'm totally happy being wrong about that. Which might sound funny to say you're happy about being wrong about something, but it's okay.
Yeah, well, that's a good thing.
Yeah, it's a good thing to get to be wrong about things sometimes. Oh my goodness gracious. My friend, it reminds me of when you were in the Rose Bowl parade with other female African-American equestrians as a team, right? And it was the first time in something like 100 years that
we were the first to be invited in 100 years to ride in the Rose Bowl. Yeah, parade, Tournament Roses, yeah.
That's so awesome.
Since then, there have been others, and thank God for that. But yeah, we were the first.
To get to start change, to be like on the front end of change. That's really fantastic, Patricia. And thank you so much for taking the lead in that and all the different things and breaking through that to give opportunities to others.
My pleasure. I mean, it's something, you know, there's history about Blacks in the horse industry all the way back to the Kentucky Derby. You know, the first 13 winning jockeys of the Kentucky Derby were Black men. Wow. And stayed the winning jockeys until they changed the procedures so where they had to license jockeys and they wouldn't license Black men. And some guys went to France and rode, like Isaac Murphy. I think he went to France and rode and did tremendously well there. So there's the history of the Black man in the horse industry is vast, but it's either covered up or lost. I think 1 in every 3 cowboys in the Old West were Black men. And did you know that the term cowboy was coined because of Black men who herd cattle?
I did not know that.
So white men that herd cattle were called cattlemen or cattle handlers, cattle hands.
Interesting.
They would call Black men boys, cow boys. If they herd cattle, they were called cowboys. And that's how that term came about.
Learn something new every day.
Yep.
Wow. Goodness gracious. Well, Patricia, it has been such a great honor to be here with you today. Is there anything else that you would like to share about your journey or what you're offering, or any bits of information for people coming into the industry that are new and they'd like to be more supportive of their communities?
Well, I think we've covered a lot. I think the only thing that I would end with is that the world has changed.
Yeah.
I mean, the stuff that just happened at the national Capitol can tell you that.
Yeah.
The world is a global world, and all people must be recognized. And if the horse industry is moving towards inclusion and equity, it's long overdue.
Yeah.
And we hope that it's not a fad because of the times. We hope that it is it becomes a standard.
Yeah.
In the industry, and only time will tell.
True. Thank you. And with that, my friend, who in the world inspires you today?
Oh God, you know, I can't say someone in the horse industry that did it. I would think it's my mom. So my mom was Seminole. She was part Seminole. Her mother was full Seminole. And her tenacity is what got me to the Marine Corps, believe it or not. Coming up in the era that I came up with, and girls were to get married to a good man and raise a family, and my mom was like, no.
I love her already.
Yeah, she's going to college, and my dad was like, no, she just needs to marry a good guy, a good man. And my mother was like, no, she's going to college. But back then, if you didn't have the money to pay for college, you couldn't go, and they couldn't afford it. So we decided that I would go to the Marine Corps to get the GI Bill so that I could attend college. And her strength and tenacity has been the driving force in my life. My dad, oh God, I'm gonna date myself now. My dad was born in 1899. His parents were slaves.
Wow.
And my father was a jockey who had a terrific accident and never rode again. So when I started riding, he hated it. He hated it to the day he died. He hated it. And it was my mom who supported me through all of that. And I remember her saying, Johnny, if she's gonna die, she'll die on a horse and she'll be happy. And so the inspiration, it was her.
That's beautiful.
It was her.
Thank you so much for sharing that beautiful story. Well, what an honor to get to spend some time with you and get to know a little bit more about you and to help share your message across the globe. So
It's my pleasure. Hope it'll help someone.
Oh, I'm sure it will. And we very well, there's some stuff in the works that we might be going up on a network to have this kind of stuff up on Amazon and Roku. And so we'll try
Sounds good.
Yeah, get the message out even farther.
Sounds good.
Keep posted, everybody. Good big news might be coming soon. So thank you all for watching. And until next time, bye.
See you later, dear.